All right. Well, hey, everybody, this is going to be a little bit of a different update than what we've done in the past because I've got Stu and Sheila Simons on with me. They have experience in how do we live and manage in the midst of crisis. And I thought, man, their wisdom, they're sharing with me some of the things they were sharing with others. And I thought, wow, this is so good. We all need to hear this. And so I invited them to be a part of this with us. And so they're going to be sharing. They're life group leaders. They're members of our church. They've got their son in our youth group, so they are actively involved here. And so I just wanted to give them the opportunity to tell us a little bit about their history with this and where they're coming from. And then I just have a list of questions, and we're going to just let them talk to us. So it's going to be great. So Stu, why don't you start, man? Tell us a little bit about your experience with all this.
Yeah, so my experience, my background, probably a little different than others, but as some of you know, I was career military. I did 20 years in the Navy, and a lot of what I did in the service kind of mirrors what we're going to talk about tonight. So I have I'm looking forward to sharing some of this practical experience with everybody here.
Awesome. Sheila, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm actually a trauma therapist right now here in Fort Collins on my licensure track. So been doing that, but I focus on trauma as a whole and how to respond in crisis situations. How do you regulate yourself when you're having trauma that's current or from the past? I also do contract therapy for another organization that focuses on doing therapy and self-care type stuff.
Okay, awesome. Well, I know a lot of what we've been talking about so far has been how are we handling this in relation to God and faith? And we've been really pushing into that. Maybe one thing that a lot of people haven't been thinking about is just the mental health aspect or the emotional health aspect of this, or maybe even just some of the practical things we need to be thinking about. So wanted to just ask you guys, in the midst of things changing so quickly and new information coming out at us all the time, what are some things that we are maybe not thinking about that we should be thinking about? And let both of you guys answer, and then we'll jump to the next one.
Sure, I'll actually jump in on that. I think the biggest thing that I've been seeing a lot of is just the overall awareness of how you're managing stress. Because we're obviously in a very heightened, stressful situation with a lot of external factors that we have no control over. And when people get into this place where it's like, I have no control over this, they can really start to be more reactive versus responsive. And so I think just having an overall awareness of how it's impacting you mentally, and then recognizing that stress can start very small, but with time, and especially if it becomes chronic, it can develop into things like PTSD, or it can lead to depressive factors or things that are a little bit more extreme. And all of us, I think, as a whole, are experiencing trauma in some form, which is very subjective, because how I'm experiencing this versus how you're experiencing this can look very different, but we're still in the middle of this thing together. And if you're not managing how you're being impacted by it, it can affect you in the long term in a negative way.
Yep. So good. Stu, anything to add?
Yeah, so when it comes to these kind of events, my wife's talking a lot about the mental side of things. A good tool that we have in a dynamic situation like this, right? There's a lot going on. We have all kinds of information coming at us. Routine, having some kind of routine helps, right? We're doing something that's totally different. I understand that. We're all doing this state mandated, government mandated lockdown at home. It's different. We've never done that. We still have to have some kind of routine, some kind of a semblance of order, some normalcy, right? Yeah. We can't control what's happening outside the house, but you can control a lot of what's happening inside your house. And those kind of routines and controls go a long way to just keeping us on a steady, even keel.
Yeah, so good. Sheila, you mentioned stress. What are some signs that we might be being impacted by stress more than what we're realizing?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, I've been hearing this from clients, is they're like, my mind is getting away from me. I am all over the map. I can't focus. I'm having intrusive thoughts. I find myself lacking concentration, and then some of it leading towards more, which would seem like depressive symptoms. So they're starting to experience sadness, hopelessness, panic, and then even somatic responses where your body's just kind of flaring off on its own. One of the things I always tell my clients is, I'm like, you need to recognize that this is not necessarily your will, you can control what's happening. Because what happens when we have a stress response, we have our autonomic nervous system. I'm going to throw some psychoeducation at you if that's okay. But basically we have our autonomic nervous system. We have two different, we have our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. One of them has the gas pedal on at any given time. Our parasympathetic, that's where you have like calm, relaxation, you're chill. Your sympathetic nervous system is where you're having heightened stress response. You're releasing cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline. And when we have high stress situations, that tends to be the one that's in the driver's seat. And so recognizing like, hey, right now I am exhibiting all these symptoms of stress. It's in my body, it's in my attitude, it's in my emotions. I'm excessively crying, it's affecting my sleep. All those different things are red flags for recognizing that, hey, I actually might have something, I have stress going on, obviously, but it might be becoming a little bit more than just stress.
Yeah. Well, that's really good. All right, Stu. So, one thing we talked about before was how you're counseling some people to just keep brushing their teeth. Keep the routine of that, which, that sounds funny, but what are some other practical things that you would maybe throw out to people as like routines? Like I know I've talked to some guys who are trying to work out more. They're just trying to keep a rhythm. Maybe they weren't even that great at it before this shut down, but now they're thinking, well, I need to do something active. And so they're creating routines like that. What are some other things that we can be doing?
Yeah. And let me just share a little bit more of, how I learned these over the years. One example, spent some time in Yemen with a small team, and we actually had a safe house. And there was, we had about a 4-day stretch that we were pretty sure we were going to be overrun and attacked. So you could say that's a little stressful. So the whole 24-hour time period for each day was spent in a routine, because you have to have a routine. You got to do those little things. If you don't brush your teeth, that's not going to impact you much today, right? But if you don't brush your teeth and then the next day you're like, you know what, I'm not going to comb my hair, I'll shower later. What you're going to notice is your mental acuity, your cognitive ability, your morale, that's going to start to decline. So going back to that example, we had that 4-day stretch. We would change between, wake up and you're on watch on the roof, kind of watching for the enemy, watching for imminent threats. And then when you're done, you just turn it off and you put on a show and you block off some time. For this 2-hour stretch, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all that stuff out. I can't do anything about it. Can't control it. But I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to work out. I'm going to brush my teeth. All those little things that add normalcy again and routine, I'm going to engage in those. And then when that time stretches up, I'm going to put it back on. I'm going to get back and do what I need to do to get by.
Okay. So, stay-at-home order 2 weeks. Should I be in sweatpants that whole time, or should I get dressed? Like, what does that look like for you? Are you
you need to get dressed, Chris. You need to get dressed. It's so important.
Okay. All right.
You gotta comb your hair. Gotta break out the hair gel if that's what you use. Some of us not so blessed, but that's okay, right?
Well, and I think a big piece to that too is it creates a sense of normalcy, and you have your familiar routines. And especially for those that have kids that they've been in structure with school. They have, a start time and an end time, and this is what my afternoon looks like when I get home from school. And all of a sudden that's been completely disrupted. And so it's very easy to start, hey, we just hang out in our pajamas and we'll just kind of, we'll just see what happens today. Or maybe there's some structure, but not a lot. But that actually causes more stress, not so much just to the parent, but actually to the kiddos, because everything that they've known is different. Their familiarity is gone. And so by you just creating those simple structures, it allows for them to be less stressed, which you'll notice in behavior drastically,
Yeah, it's really good. Okay, so apart from stress, what should we be looking at as far as mental health, emotional health go? Is there anything there?
In what way?
Well, so I'm thinking like, okay, so stress, I feel like I've kind of, what you shared, really good. I can take that away. What else, as far as our mental health, do we need to be aware of in this time?
I think, honestly, the all or nothing thinking, it's very easy to fall into panic mode. And only see it from this one lens of like, this is this thing coming at us. We're so terrified and this will never end. And we kind of go into that all or nothing thinking. And So being aware of like, am I responding out of a place of fear constantly? Am I starting to become more isolated? That's going to affect you mentally. I keep thinking I was so grateful that you guys started the Zoom platform for us as life groups, because I'm like, golly, we have to stay connected in this so you don't feel alone or feel isolated. I think the other piece to that too is just recognizing your own personal threshold of tolerance, because everybody has a level where it's like, hey, I can operate in some stress and be really productive.
Yeah.
And some of us kind of go to that next red flag and we're a mess in our own homes, and we start lashing out at our family members, and we start withdrawing, start to deal with hopelessness and different things like that. So being self-aware of like, you know what, I'm kind of operating out of this place of fear or anxiety or stress or whatever it is for you, and having some good strategies in place to minimize the effects of that, like having some good coping skills.
Yeah, so good. Stu, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I want to just kind of mirror that, or touch base, jump on it, whatever you want to call it. You know, my wife and I've talked about this too. You know, how you're acting as parents, how you're handling this, your kids are going to pick up those cues. Okay. Spouses, the same thing. Spouses will pick up each other's cues. So, you know, I know you talked about it in the sermon on Sundays, and we talked about it in our life groups, but going to that place, your FaceTime, that's so important right now. That's one of the things that should be on your routine. That's where your peace is going to come from. Because if you're, like my wife mentioned, if you're kind of giving in to what you're hearing, even if you're not talking about it, your kids are going to sense it. Yeah. And you're going to see some changes in them, and it's going to be hard to establish some kind of routine, some kind of normalcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to jump on that too is we have the authority to limit our external influences right now. So if we're plugged to the media, and I'm like social media and I'm on the news stations and that's all I'm focusing on, well, it's kind of like nothing about that's life-giving right now. Let's just be real. You know, so it's like, okay, I'm going to allot an hour, maybe 2 hours to all this stuff. But for the rest of it, I'm going to shut it off, because I need to actually have something that's life-giving into my soul, whether it's God, whether it's good social outlets. And I think the other place to that too, or other piece to that is, you know, still trying to do your exercise, just your practical things, and turning on, like, I think Netflix has, what is it? The comedy guys. What's that name, Stewart?
Apostles of Comedy.
Apostles of Comedy. They're so good. These Christian guys. Getting some humor, like you need to find something life-giving. And then I think just to add on to what you asked earlier, Chris, about the mental health piece to this, recognizing if you are becoming the type of person right now, because you're so overwhelmed, obviously, but if you're dumping on someone else, we're all in the same place. We've all been watching the same news stories. We're listening to the same thing. That can actually become very overwhelming. You start to want to be a support, but you're like, oh my gosh, I'm barely hanging on by a thread right now. I can't take on your stuff too. So being able to have accessible outlets for yourself that will help you regulate yourself, so that when you're talking with people, you can feel like you're having life-giving conversations.
Yeah. Gosh, so good, guys. That's really good. Okay, so we're all stay at home now, and some of us are with our families, some of us are with roommates, and we're with those same people day in and day out. And maybe this first weekend, this is actually enjoyable, feels a little restful, but I'm thinking, man, over the long term, how do we do this well? How do we continue to relate to each other healthily over the course of this?
Yeah. I'll let Stewart jump on this.
Yeah, going back to the tight quarters, you know, scenario. Listen, this is going to end, okay? We know this is going to end. We're not going to be in lockdown for the rest of our lives. We don't know when it's going to end, but we know this is going to end. So we got to hold on to that. That's something that we can have hope in. This too shall pass. God's in control. He's in the driver's seat. He's not caught off guard. So now we're stuck in the house. This is probably a good, especially if it's tight quarters, right? Big family, tight quarters. Showers, probably a good thing, right? Some kind of routine, okay? Can't stress that enough. I know I mentioned that. Brushing the teeth brings a lot of blessing to the household, okay? We talked about that before. But, you know, like everything, you got to have a season to it. You got to have a pattern, right? So having some kind of normalcy, and then when you get to the end of the week, okay, what's going to be our pattern for the weekend? What are we going to do different on the weekend? Because that helps us, you know, manage time as it goes forward. Exercise, my wife's talked about that. Hey, sunlight, that's a big deal. letting in that sunlight in the house. That helps us, mentally. It helps us emotionally. It's good for us. Open up the windows. Maybe you don't want to go outside. That's okay. But sit in front of a window and get some of that sunlight.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too is just trying to create things that are fun. So I know for us, we've been playing a lot of ping pong, and I'm the reigning champion, which is awesome. We've been doing that, and then when we do get on each other's nerves, we're cooped up, and so we each have our own little sanctuary we try to get away to. So whether that's the restroom for somebody, or whether that's your bedroom, shutting the door, whatever it is, because sometimes you just need that. I need to be alone, solitude moment to feel a little bit more refreshed, and just realizing like everybody's in the same place, just to be able to have that grace for each other right now while it is a little tight. I know with my son, one of the things, I've got a teenager at home, so I'm like, man, how do I, we're all cooped up, like what do I do differently with him, and just trying to help him engage in things and activities like, hey, let's cook together, let's play a board game together, let's find something he likes video games, and him and Stewart will talk about it forever. I'm completely lost, but they're into it. And I think just having those little things is also creating you're creating a closeness with each other, and then also having the respect of like, hey, I need a break, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, I know we need to wrap this up for you guys, so just what is one thing, each of you guys just share us one thing to encourage the church during this time. Just what have you guys been thinking about, praying about as you've led life group? Give us a takeaway, give us an encouragement.
I think for me personally, I was just thinking as individuals, I'm like, gosh, I feel like this is the church's finest hour, honestly, because we as believers, we're not exempt from suffering. That's not a promise to us. But in it, we have hope and we have a savior. And I think the other piece to this is like one of the gals in life group, she goes, I just realized that most of those stories are written during hardship and crisis. And it was just kind of this place of like, what, there's this place for us as believers where our roots are going deeper. And then for some of us, maybe we're recognizing what we believe for the first time. And we're like, wow, I didn't realize I thought this way. So it's a building of trust and faith with God. And what seems very, like crazy right now, it's like we have an anchor. And I've been telling our life group, I'm like, listen, guys, I'm like, we need to look to our Savior, not our circumstances. This is who we're pointed to, and he's going to get us through and carry us through. So I think for me on an individual level, that's what my takeaway has been.
That's awesome. Sue?
Yeah. Listen, never before in history has the church had the ability to still influence on the scale that we do right now in this time. Already, just our church, we did life group over Zoom. That's a first. For many of the people, that was the first time they ever did that. This is something unique, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity. We're chasing Jesus. We have something going on that we don't know, and we don't have an answer, but we have hope. We get to carry hope, and we have technology, and we have all these things at our fingertips. And on a scale never before seen, the church has the ability to influence people with hope.
That's awesome. I think one of the unique things about this happening in the day it is how connected we can still be if we put some effort into it, and just recognizing how much we really do need each other in moments like this. My wife and I were watching a Bethel worship set at their church that was recorded months ago, and we saw a large crowd. Like they kind of panned out, and we saw the large crowd, and we're like, that feels so weird right now, And I'm like, it's only been 2 weeks. Like how quickly we've adjusted already to our circumstances. Like how quickly I'm already practicing social distancing when I go to the grocery store. And just even that those changes going on that are starting to become somewhat subconscious, I'm recognizing, okay, but I need people still, because I'm recognizing my own isolation now, where before I had all these natural connects. I'm like, man, I need people. I actually have to do the work to, download Marco Polo and Marco Polo out my life group guys and let them know what's going on, and then hear responses. And we had a moment yesterday where some guys were Marco Poloing, and I saw their face. I'm like, man, I feel like I haven't seen you in a month, but it's only been a couple weeks. But it's just because it's just changed so quickly that I'm still catching up to that, and how much I need other people. It's almost catching me off guard how much I need to see other people in these types of venues. So thank you guys so much for doing this. Super important. And I think I'd speak for all life group leaders that we want to help people in this journey. God's, and being a life group leader, we feel the responsibility that what God's called us to do to care and shepherd people. And so thank you guys for doing that so well. Thanks for doing that with our church right now. But I think all of us are available as people have questions or trying to figure this thing out, that we're not in this alone. And I think that's, that's the good news right now, is we're not doing this alone. And all of us are in different places and experiencing this in very different ways, but we don't have to do it alone. So thank you guys so much. Been a blessing. You guys shared a lot of wisdom, so appreciate you both. Thanks for doing it.
Really good to see you, Chris.
You too, man. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever, Stu.
Forever. It's been so long.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, have a great night. And yeah, see you around.
All right. Take care.
All right. See you guys.